Hi, Martin here with another video, and today I'm going to show you how to create graphs in Excel. So graphs are one of the best ways that you can visualize the data that you've collected, and obviously this can help your understanding, but it's also great at explaining the key information from your data to other people. So in this tutorial I'm going to go over how to select the data that you want to include in your graph, how to create the graph itself, and then how we're going to label it correctly. So let's get started. So firstly, I have a basic Excel spreadsheet here with some data about Pokemon. You can follow along with this tutorial using any spreadsheet data that you might have. So firstly, it does help to ensure that your data is organized and formatted in that each column has a heading. So obviously this is just good practice anyway, but also when we're selecting data for our graph, it helps to instantly see what each column, the data in each column, what it contains. So let's go ahead and make our first graph. So first we're just going to make a simple bar graph that displays the name of the Pokemon along with their attack stat. So to do this, we're going to click at the top of the name column, and then we're going to drag down, and I'm going to include the first 10 from this spreadsheet in my graph. So I also want to include the attack stat over here. So if I click and drag, what you can see is I've selected it, but it has unselected the names that I have over here. So in order to stop that happening, once you've selected the first column of data that you want to include, if you hold Command or Control on Windows and then click and drag and to select your second column, then it will allow you to select both. Okay, so that was click and drag to select your first, let go of the mouse click, and then hold Command, click, and then select your second part of data. And I can obviously do this again to select other columns if I wished. So what we're going to do now is, I'm already on the insert here, so you'll probably be on home. So click on insert, and then in this middle section here, this is where all of the graph options are. So I'm going to go ahead and click on bar, and you can see from here there are various different types of bar graphs that you can include, including 3D graphs. But for now, let's go ahead and select the first option. So as you can see, we have a bar graph with our names along the bottom and then our attack stats along the left-hand side. So this is already looking pretty good. What we can do now is go ahead and update our title. So I've got my Pokemon attack stats. What's also good practice is you might want to put some axis titles on your graph. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. And I want to add a title onto my X and Y here. So up the top, ensure you've got chart design selected. And we're going to go to the first option over here on the left-hand side, which is add chart element. And then we're going to select axis titles. Okay, so I can go ahead and select horizontal, and then I can change that title to name. And then I'm going to go back, axis titles, and I'm going to select vertical, and I'm going to change that to attack. So you can now see we've got a pretty professional looking graph, and using the built-in features in Excel, it doesn't take a huge amount of effort. So why don't we go ahead and do that one more time so that we really understand what's going on. So for this, I'm going to create a line graph, and I'm going to create it using the names again, but I'm going to include their HP instead of attack. So remember, we click and drag down to select the amount of data we want to include. If you wanted to include the whole column, you could just click on the letter right at the top and it will include that. But I don't want every single piece of data, so I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to include the first 20 this time. And also remember that we need to hold Command key or Control before we click and to select our second column of data. So now I've got both of those selected. We go back to insert, and instead of clicking on bar, I'm going to click on line, and again there's various options here including 3D, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with a traditional line graph. So again, we already have a pretty good looking graph here. So we have our names at the bottom, and then we have our HP over here on the left hand side, and we have all of those plotted along our graph. So again, I can go in here, I can change the title to Pokemon HP, and I can also go up to chart design, and I can add my axis titles here as well. So I can go ahead and rename my horizontal axis to name, and then I can go ahead and rename my vertical axis to HP. So now you can see in probably all of about 5 minutes, I've got 2 graphs which really help to visualize the data that I have, and you can go through and add as much data as you like. The benefit of going in and using some of these templates is it will show you your graph. If it doesn't look how you want, you can just go back, select a different type of graph, and 90% of the time there'll be a graph that's going to really help you to visualize the data that you've collected. So I really hope it's been useful, and I'll see you in the next video.